Yo, what's up everyone? This is your boy Bronx Reefer Brock checking in with another video. I finally decided to do a video about the salt mix I'm currently using in my 75-gallon mixed reef tank. Like a lot of people, I started out with the basics, the instant ocean, basic regular salt mix, and slowly graduated to reef crystals. And for the last few months, I've been testing out a new salt mix, observing the tank and the parameters and the livestock, to see if any significant changes take effect. And after a lot of nervous research, I settled on the ESV B-ionic saltwater system. You basically make your own salt here. It's a 4-part system in its purest form, and if mixed correctly, I feel that it has the perfect parameters for your calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium. And of course, your salinity levels as well. Now, of course, with anything that is top-notch, it costs a bit more, and it takes a little more time and patience to mix a salt, but you want to put only the best in your reef tank. Now, when I first looked at this bucket, this is the 100-gallon mix, I couldn't for the life of me figure out how they got all of these components into this bucket. But everything you need to make perfect salt water is in this bucket. If you like your salinity at 1.25, this salt mix, if the directions are followed, will get you there perfectly every time. Your calcium will come in at about 450. Your alkalinity will be like a 9.1, and your magnesium will be somewhere around 1400. Now, some of the other salt mixes I've struggled with to get those parameters nailed down. And with some of the other salts, you're going to find yourself rearranging and recalculating your dosing pumps and how much you dose a day. But with the ESV, everything has been fine. I've been using it for 2 months now. I'm very happy with it. It seems a little complicated on the outset, but if you take the time with it, you read through the directions, you have all the measuring utensils and tools that you need. The one thing that is not in the box, in the bucket, is a scale. You have to have a scale. And now, even though ESV gives you the measurements to do this by hand, if you just want to go old school, like you're mixing regular salt and just use scoops, I found that when I initially tried that, things were slightly off. And so I invested in a scale, and I went by the chart weight measurements, the grams, the milligrams, and everything was perfect after that. Here I'm going to show you guys how to mix 20 gallons of salt mix. Check your handy dandy chart, and you're going to look for 20 gallons on the left side. The trick here is that you don't want to use 20 gallons of RO water. You want to use 15 gallons. That way, if the mix is too high, if it's too strong, you can just add RO water to it and top it off and get you to where your salinity should be. Now on the chart, it says to mix or to make 19.6 gallons of RO water. No one knows what that is, but I have 15 gallons marked off on my brew container, so I make 15 gallons. I keep it easy. Next, it says you're going to add your sodium chloride. With that, it says by volume, you're going to add 6 cups, or by weight, you can add 4 pounds. I decided with that, since it's a little more lenient, I use the cup measure and I add 6 cups of the sodium chloride. Now back to Instant Ocean for a quick second. I'm not picking on Instant Ocean, but I know that the regular Instant Ocean mixes a little low at about 1.021, and I struggle to, top off my calcium and alkalinity and magnesium and my salinity levels to get everything back to where I want it to be. And so also the reef crystals mixes a little low as well, not as low as the regular Instant Ocean, but it mixes a little low for me. And so, you have to adjust your doser, you have to adjust things, and it's just a hassle to try to reach the parameters you want. And God forbid you get a tainted box or a tainted bucket of the salt. And if it's contaminated or anything like that, you don't know what you're putting in your tank. This stuff here is pure. And so these are the 6 cups that I'm adding. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. I don't want to drag this out. But 6 cups of the sodium chloride is what goes into the RO water first. And another thing with reef crystals, disclaimer, not picking on reef crystals, is that when I did my mix, when I mixed 20 gallons of reef crystals, my magnesium was through the roof. And so I struggled to get the magnesium down as well. Okay, back to the action. So I have a little MaxiJet type pump here. It's not really strong enough, but it does the job when I'm mixing my salt because I usually do it overnight. But with the ESV, you don't have to mix salt overnight. It doesn't have to sit. You mix this stuff and it's ready within the hour to go into your reef tank. So when it comes to the sodium chloride, you want to mix this stuff until it's totally dissolved in the water. The nice thing is that even as you can see, as I put the sodium chloride in the water is still relatively clear. Whereas some of the other salt mixes, it was a blur and you had to wait for it to clear up. You had to wait for a lot of the salt crystals to dissipate and dissolve. And when you can't wait for a small MaxiJet pump to do the job, you got to put some elbow grease into it. Get in there and stir it up. Okay, so at this point, things are clearing up. I'm very happy. And I'm going to move on to the next component, which is the magnesium sulfate. With that as well, it goes by the cups or by the pounds. They want 1.1 pounds or 2 cups. I decided to go with the 1.1 pounds or 500 grams using my handy dandy scale. This is the magnesium sulfate. You kind of want to squish this stuff up so there are no clumps. And then you're just going to add this. You're going to add about 500 grams to a typical Pyrex cup. This didn't come in the bucket, but I had this sitting by. I always have this, and I kind of like to use it. Make sure with your scale that you zero out your scale. That's just like calibrating any other equipment that you might have on a reef tank. But here we need 500 grams of magnesium sulfate, and you're just going to add. You're going to watch the numbers go up. All of this is a very simple process. It's just following instructions, and it's just a matter of how much salt mix you want to make. How big is your water change? But if you're at this point of stepping up your salt game, you kind of already know what you want, what your target numbers are, and where you want to be. And so gram by gram, we try to hit that 500 number. Everything doesn't have to be exact, but as long as you get to what the chart tells you to get to, you're going to be in the right range. Just going to mix that up, add that to your RO water with your sodium chloride. And now you moved on to your next component. Make sure you clean any utensils out. You clean your Pyrex, your scoops. You clean everything in between every component you use. You don't want any cross-contamination on anything. And you want your numbers to come out right. So here, the next component is the liquid component A. And with that, they tell you that you should mix by volume 757 milliliters of the component A. All right, and there we are. Pretty close, huh? Now with the liquid components, it's slightly different. With the powder components, you would just basically mixing them until dissolved. With the liquid components A and B, you're going to mix them for at least 1 minute. Then you're going to give the beaker a good cleaning and come back and mix liquid component B. Liquid component B calls for 378 milliliters. And once again, you're going to make sure that your scale is zeroed out. You're going to check your chart, just make sure everything is right. I always double and triple check when it comes to measurements because I'm no math whiz, but as long as I have this chart here, I should highlight these things. But if you can see my scale, it's not calibrated again, so I have to recalibrate the scale. Readjust that back to 0. Okay, there we go. And now we're ready for liquid component B. And we're going to add 378 milliliters of that. So all we got to do is hit that number. Okay, so I went slightly over. So what I do in this case, I leave a little bit in the beaker. So I add what I think is 378 mils, and I leave a little bit in the beaker since I went over slightly. I know to some people at first this seems overly complicated when you're just so used to mixing your salt, just pouring it and kind of just hitting the salinity and moving on. But it really isn't. And that's why I'm going through these steps to show you guys that it's really not such a complicated thing. Everything is kind of laid out there for you. Once you have the scale, you're good to go. Unfortunately, my refractometer is broken, and so I had to go old school and pull out the hydrometer. Never throw these things away, people. Let that be a lesson to you. You never know when it's going to come in handy. And so the first reading is going to be at 1.028, which is where I want it to be, because I want it to be higher than what it's supposed to be, because you're supposed to mix 20 gallons. These mixtures are for 20 gallons, not 15. So what we're going to do is we're going to top off with the RO water, and we're going to get everything back down to 1.025. That's where I like it. And so I kept topping off and measuring and measuring and topping off until I reached the 1.025. And no, I did not use Poland Spring water. I keep my RO water in a Poland Spring bottle, in several bottles actually, ready for mixing. And so as you can see here, we are at 1.025. But folks, if you go back, did you notice how clear the water was? Did you see how clear the water mixes? That's a beautiful thing. And that's one of the wonderful things about this salt mix. Just look at that. The water is perfect. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all it is to the ESV B-ionic saltwater system. It takes a little more time. It seems a bit intimidating, but this is what you get in the end. Give it a try, people. You don't know what you're missing. This is Bronx Reefer Brock. Thanks for watching.